Welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast, where we discuss and debate the latest news regarding course cutters, bandits, and bib mules.
Hey, this is Derek Murphy, Marathon Investigation. This is a Marathon Investigation podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Scott Coomer.
Hello.
Hello, Scott. And Scott also hosts a podcast, 10 Junk Miles. Anything else you want to mention there, Scott?
No, just 10 Junk Miles. We're available on iTunes, and I also am directing the Badger Trail races, which are coming to you in August of 2019. Look them up on Ultra Sign Up.
Yeah, those races sound awesome. I'm thinking about if I ever do a 100-miler, that might be the start because you have a 36-hour limit, and I like that.
I would be watching you. I would be watching you very closely.
I would expect nothing less. And today, I'm really excited that we're joined by Marc Roy of Sportstats. Sportstats is the largest timing results company in North America. And Marc, welcome.
Thank you, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, just real quick, tell us a little bit about kind of your background, Marc, and how you got started with Sportstats.
It started all the way back in 1992. I was a race director for a duathlon in a little town just east of Ottawa called the Rockland Duathlon, and we hired Sportstats back then, which was just formed in 1991 to do the results. And met with the owners, and they timed the event for us. And right away, because I was putting on a race, the company that owns Sportstats also put on races back in the day. Called TBM Sports and Fitness Events, and they hired me to help them put on events. And I did that for about a year. And after a year, they needed help on the Sportstats side, and I joined that team. That's like 1993. And because I was bilingual, I spoke French, I was able to go after Quebec races. So back in the day, we had 30 events or so, and I started with them, and we grew the company at about 42 events. By 1994, we got 10 events in Quebec, and I ended up buying the company in 1995.
Okay, and how many events are you doing now?
We went from 42 back in 95, and in 2019, we're going to do 1,300 events around the world.
Wow. Okay, and you say around the world, I mean, that's literally everywhere.
Yeah, we do 35 countries right now. Our main office is in Ottawa, Canada. We have an office in Quebec City, a small office in Toronto. We have an office in Vancouver, BC, and we have 3 offices in the U.S., one in Grand Rapids, one in Salt Lake City, and one in Groveland, Florida.
Was there anything specific about the timing business that attracted you? I mean, what did you want to be a timer when you were a kid? How did you get into timing itself?
The main thing for me is I was already in triathlon. I did my first triathlon in 1988. So I started doing triathlon, which was a rarity at the time. It was a new sport, and mainly in Canada. We just that's how I really got into it. There was a triathlete to start off, and I had the opportunity to also work in triathlon, and that's what attracted me. So at the start, I thought this would be a great part-time job to have. And when I got the opportunity to buy the company, I also thought, hey, this will be part-time. But with only a few, I would say 6 months after buying the company, I realized that this might be a lot more than just part-time work. So I just started teaching. I had a phys ed position and a full-time phys ed position in high school, and I did it for 6 months, and I quit and went straight to timing full-time.
Very cool, very cool. I want to jump into real excited to have you here. I think we'll have a lot of education because so really kind of starting off, and I get asked this all the time, and I probably answer it incorrectly as far as the chip technology. As far as what can you kind of explain as far as the timing mat technology and the chips, and what I'm going to kind of lead into is kind of what's causing misreads and what could cause issues with those chips, legitimate, and what can runners do to kind of make sure they're not, that they're getting picked up at timing mats and whatnot.
Yeah, the technology has come a long way. If we go back to the 96, 97 years when the first timing chip came out, when they were on the shoe, there was nothing else out there. It was a passive technology on the shoe, RFID, made by Championship, which evolved into MyLapse today. And that was the first one. For 10, 12 years, that was the only technology available. And believe it or not, it's still widely used today. Championship was a solid system It was the first one introduced and was pretty much, I would say, the most robust system that was ever introduced because we still have probably 30 of those timing systems that we bought 20 years ago on our shelves, and we still use them for triathlon all the time. And as the years went by, basically new technologies did come out, and people wanted the chip integrated to the bib. But back in the days, the technology was simply too expensive to have a disposable technology. So MyLapse was one of the first company with ChronoTrack, basically back in the day, coming out with a timing chip available in the race bib. And of course, you have the issue with the human body in the way, and it's still a passive technology. And basically, the detection rate were good, but you needed a piece of foam, and you still need that piece of foam today to make sure you get an accurate detection. But over the years, the timing technologies have remained virtually the same. What's improved a lot is the actual tag itself. You have many companies working on that tag, many companies that are using the same tag in between and very similar readers along the way. And so we've been kind of following everything and using the best technology and the best tags that are out there.
So what is if everything's perfect, what is the accuracy rate? If the bibs are worn correctly, everything's perfect, what would you expect just as a typical?
We've done many races where we've had 100% read rate throughout the race, from races with 50 people to 5,000 people. We've had extremely accurate, but you do need a perfect day where everybody wears the bib correctly on the front. And you do need a main and a backup system. Anybody that tries to sell a technology that tells you only need one line at the start, one line at the finish line, you'll get 100% read rate. They're smoking weed, that's for sure. So out there today, there are many technologies that are getting closer to that 100%. Most of them are the 98.4 to 99.9% read rate. But when you do everything right, when you tell participants to wear the bib on the front, when you tell participants to not fold the bibs and manipulate it in any way, and when you have a perfect weather day, sunny day, usually the read rates will be in the 99.9% rate. Pretty much. And that's what we've been experiencing lately with the technology we've been using, which is pretty much the highest you will ever go.
Yeah, that's great. And I can definitely attest to that. Like looking at Boston results this past year when it was raining the whole time and timing mats were sitting underwater and it was cold and people had their bibs covered up by multiple layers. I mean, it was almost impossible for me to really do any analysis on it to say, because A, I couldn't see people's pictures because they had the bibs covered up, and B, just all the legitimate misreads. People weren't cutting the course. They would just, you had some mats in certain time frames that might be like 80%, where it's just, the mat was just underwater and it just, you just had failed. So
I don't think any technology would have performed much better. MyLapse is at the top of the chain when it comes down to results accuracy and results. They pretty much have the best tag in the industry, along with Race Result, basically. Those two technologies, and we've used them. We've used MyLapse for 20 plus years, and we're using Race Result as well now. So those tags and that technology is the best in the market. But again, the conditions were atrocious for everybody last year.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the article I wrote about the runner who qualified, or he just missed Boston by maybe 3 or 4 seconds. And the reason was he didn't get picked up at the start line. And that was because his bib was turned around behind him. So basically he had to work, found photos, and use GPS, and we were able to get his time adjusted to be a true chip time versus they just defaulted to the gun time. That's why he was left out initially. So can you stress the importance and, bib in the front? Is there anything else that runners can do to make sure they're, not...
I think the bib in front is important. I think the race belt causes an issue most of the time simply because the bib is flopping around. The position of the tag is important. So if your bib is flopping around as you're actually running over a mat and it goes actually horizontal, you could get missed on the timing mat. And that's why at all the events that we do, we'll actually place a main and a backup system at all the key points at the start, every key point on the course, and the finish line, getting us closer to 99.9% rate. But race belts are not great, but if everybody wears it properly and you're aware as you're going over a timing mat, and if your bib's flapping around, just taking your hand, making sure it doesn't flap around and gets read properly. Also, not stopping your watch and covering that bib basically and just putting it really close to your body. Wait 2 or 3 seconds once you're past those timing mats and then stop your watch.
Can I ask a quick question? I just wondering, in terms of, is it just binary in terms of what the machine picks up? Is it, we got a chip here or nothing? Or is there such a thing as like it registered something, but it didn't know what it was? It didn't know who it was. It didn't know that, you didn't get a complete reading, or is it just yes or no?
Yeah, it's yes or no. And what happens when it's a yes, it's often 30, 40, 50, 60 times per race number. So if a bib is not being read once, there's got to be an issue and something physically blocking that number. And most of the time, it's either somebody playing with the foam, the position of the bib is completely wrong, it's too close to your body, there's water on the tag per se, something covering it. So it's a yes or no. And then when it's a yes, it's getting read multiple times. And what the most timing system do today is they'll basically take the apex. So if your bib is read 47 times in that second time frame, they'll take the apex right over the timing mat, making it as accurate as they can.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's good information. I think that people, just don't understand. And when I was going through that article, people say, "Hey, my bib never gets misread." People just, don't understand the technology as it is. So I think that's definitely, very helpful. And so now, kind of going on, we talked about technology. I think you touched on the old shoe chips. And when I started, running 15 years ago, it was always, on the shoe, then you had to stop and get it untied. And, if you had it laced through, it was a big pain. So I definitely like the bib chips as a convenience factor in getting runners through. I'm sure that's a lot of the motivation for that technology. Now getting into the part that everyone expects me to talk about is the cheating. And, from a timing, I think what you look for, and, what I think about is any kind of, course cutting, missing mats. I'm just, from your standpoint, hey, what is your responsibility as far as detecting cheating and either issuing the disqualifications or notifying the race director? Just kind of how do you feel your role in, kind of catching and cleaning the results is?
Yeah, I think whether we time a local 10K with a mat halfway or a qualifier for Boston or any marathons, large marathons that we do, we have an obligation to make sure that the results we produce are 100% accurate, that there hasn't been any cheating along the way. And we have a pretty good system in place that will detect that and a process that's in place. So we will analyze the results and pretty much pull 95 to 99% of the legitimate people that actually cut the course. And we can't tell if they're cheaters or they accidentally cut the course, they got injured, got back too close to the finish line, or a race director ran a bib across the finish line. There's so many factors, but we do have a system in place that will actually detect those, and we have a process. So once we take a race, let's say that's got an out and back and it's got mats in the way, and then the first thing that we analyze is missed detections. So that's the first thing. Our software detects that immediately, and that gets flagged automatically. If it's a point-to-point course and we have detections along the way, we're missing one detection, but your pace has not changed and your pace is normal, then basically most participants will stay in the results just because there hasn't been an increase in pace. So that's number one, missed mats. And then the secondary will actually analyze the pace if there's any change. The next one is if there's any missed mat and there's acceleration in pace, then that's a red flag again. And most of the time that's reported to the race director, and then the race director makes a final call on the disqualification. That's why sometimes it does not happen right away. And usually most disqualifications are really clear cut. For example, somebody gets to mile 13, mile 16 of the marathon, and we have no detection whatsoever, and they get negative splits by an hour, and that's an automatic cue. That's so easy for us to. And
me too. Yeah, those are the ones. I mean, pretty much everything you said that you do it automatically and quickly, and it takes, that's what I'm doing on my spreadsheets after I, scrape the data or get it however I get it. But yeah, that's kind of the key things I focus on as far as, timing nets. Now then I'll look again. The hard thing is, I think when I started this, it was kind of the race directors and the timers were the enemies because they weren't doing enough. You've kind of been show me where I was wrong, where you guys have really come a long ways. I know races that have taken over, I barely have to kind of feel like I have to look at them and I don't find as much as I used to. So you guys it's definitely working from what I can see.
Now, some of the races we do, and about them, where it's not 20, 30, 40 people. Sometimes it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of basically either they're not telling us they're changing distance and they're doing it on the fly because that's how they've been trained to do it before. And we have software that catches it. So we're talking hundreds and hundreds of changes sometime during a race. And of course, we'll miss a couple. But we have a process in place. And remember, we're timing 20 to 40 races per weekend. And each timer has the obligation to make sure to go through the results and does that. And it makes it very hard when we don't have timing mats on the course. But most large races do have that in place, and we catch most of them. And you're asking if there's a lot of cheaters? Not that many cheaters. But we do catch the odd one, and usually we're able to go back and verify on Sportstats the past races they've done, as you've done many, many times yourself, to see if it is person able to run a 3:20 marathon or the best he's done is a 4:09 or something fishier right away. So we do that all the time as well. We use our own system to verify their results for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit of being as large as you have. You have your own database, which covers a heck of a lot. But yeah, I see that as well. There's, usually that's when I kind of get into the photos, and there was one I wrote about today in Philadelphia where, before I even saw the photos, I saw what I did was same thing, compared runners' results in 2018 Philadelphia versus 2017. He went from 5:20 to a 3 hour. I checked more history. Everything was 5 hours. So I just waited for the photos to prove it. And he won the age group. It's one of those things where, you're sure they cheated, but you have to look at the photos to verify, which kind of brings me to the point. Do you, work directly with the race photographers to kind of coordinate? Maybe they get, maybe get some timing data from them. Because I know I have in the past gotten timestamps on photos and locations to kind of get my own splits where it wasn't picking up, that kind of thing.
Yes, and it's actually the other way around. We actually provide actual timing data to every photo company post-race, so they can actually pull the photos much quicker. They can actually cut the videos from our timing data. Without our timing data, they would be actually pretty much not being able to identify all the photos, because they still have a process where somebody physically looks at every photo and identifies them. But using our timing data, they're able to accelerate that by cutting it from 5 days to 24 hours. So we have a photo company in Ottawa, actually, in our office that we worked with all the time to get photos. So if we did miss something, and we have video cameras, of course, that we can go back on and verify the video at that time. And most of the issues we're getting now is those bib swapping. Is people basically thinking that, hey, I'm just going to give my bib to my buddy, and they don't realize they're going to screw up the results, screw up the age group, screw up the gender, because often that happens. And that happens, that's probably the first problem that we have right now is bib swapping.
Yeah, I've been writing about that all the time. Again, and I kind of differentiate between bib swapping, which is like you said, hey, I can't run, just take my bib, not really thinking about it. So kind of an innocent bib swapping. If that can be, versus, the bib muling where, hey, run with my bib, and then they run with less time, and that person uses that time to run Boston themselves. So those are two very different things.
Yeah.
It could be the person running with the bib may not have known, the intent of of the seller, but that's when it kind of goes to a different level. And I literally every major race, I find that, and usually it's when when you have an older female gives a bib to a younger male, so, a 65-year-old female gives it to a 20-year-old male who's a fast runner, he's going to typically place in the awards. And so, that happens. Yeah. I mean, I think we've literally seen that in just about every major race. And that's frustrating. And I don't know what the solution is to stop it from happening in the first place. That would be very difficult. Have you seen anything as far as solutions on the rise? I've kind of advocated.
I think
what about the wristband kind of thing? I think Berlin does that, or some.
I think Ironman does an excellent job of this. Just to give you an example, where they will ban both the user and the giver of the bib up to a lifetime ban if this happens. And we've had some people they can't race. They'll go in, pick up their race kit, give their bracelet, give their bib to somebody else. They race, and that's even worse, especially on a distance like that where they haven't signed the waiver. They're out there with the wrong medical information. That goes through every single race. They just don't realize the issue that they could be putting themselves and everybody else into. So there's, like you say, there's the actual person that's looking to cheat, looking to actually replace somebody. And then, or there's the people that are actually running for others as mule, and you've caught a lot of those over the last couple of years and put a lot of groups out there getting more and more difficult. I think the solution is basically either not fines, but banning participants on a larger scale. That if you get caught as a bandit and you cause this, you get one warning. After that, they have to start banning, and that's to be widespread. But how do you keep that database? Who's going to do that? And I think public shaming is a good way to do it as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's where Scott and I differ, and that's kind of why Scott's my co-host, to kind of be someone to keep me in check, to keep me from going crazy with with that. So I think that's kind of. I was on Scott's podcast, and he'll probably repost it at some point. Where we called it a 2-hour argument. so he's kind of on the opposite side, and that's where I struggle with that with every article I write. It's like, okay, what's kind of the give and take? Yeah, this person, I mean, there's some people where I write where I feel bad about that, and others it's good. But there was there was a woman at Disney who, and she literally, we don't know how she got the bib, but she picked up somebody else's physical bib either, and you have to go through a lot of process. There's photo ID and date of birth, so she had that information somehow or was inside. She stole someone's bib, and she actually got handcuffed going to the finish line of the series of races. So she got caught the first day. We knew who it was because she'd done it before. And then the next day she ran under her own bib, and she got pulled off, her finish medal taken away, and she was cuffed right on the course. And so, it's, and I wrote about that, of course, and, other ones. So I think so. Writing about it, the deterrent effect is kind of where, if we just quietly do this, it doesn't deter anybody.
Well, and I just want to be clear about the publicly shaming part is that, in my opinion, so let's say that you catch someone and they get disqualified, they lose their medal, they don't get their award, or they don't get their result, and they have to go home and tell their family why they didn't get a medal. That's one thing. And it's not so much the fact that you're out there writing about the fact that they cheated. It's the 14 million people on Facebook that go into the screw that lady, she deserves to die. She's, like that vitriol and that pylon. That's the thing that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable too. And they kind of sometimes, like how much do I try to hide? People always figure it out. From the day one to now, I'm much more conservative. There was one a couple of weeks ago that I got very uncomfortable with. And this woman, she did it. She, didn't, admit to it. It was kind of multiple times cut in the course, multiple age group winners. It's a small local race. She took the award. I mean, so she was, kind of on the upper end of, kind of sleaziness, but still with the, she had posted on her Facebook, don't believe everything you read, and left it public. So everyone's responding, and she never came back onto it. So, and I can't moderate her page. I can only moderate mine. I can ban, so it's like, but that made me feel uncomfortable as well. So I'm not alone there, and yet I know if I didn't write the article, that probably wouldn't happen. It wouldn't have happened.
I have one other question on this.
With that internally.
I know we're going to get stuck in the weeds on the ethics of public shaming probably on every single interview that we do. But, my other question for the time range with respect to cheating is, like we talked about the fact that sometimes you can look at the timing results and say they negative split by X amount of time, or, there's some sort of abnormality in the data such that you're sure that they probably cheated. Are there instances in which you look at it and you say, there's obviously got to be a spectrum, right? Like for example, I negative split my marathon by 10 minutes. Maybe you say, ooh, that seems unlikely, but I can't really go all the way to being a cheater. Like, where do you draw the line, and how do you make those distinctions? Or do you just say, race director, this is the facts, it's up to you?
Yeah, we start, in our result, we set at 3% acceleration. That's where we flag. So 3% acceleration, we flag that. So if you basically miss a split, that's a flag right away. And then on top of that, we also have a detection after halfway that if you go 3% faster, that's also another flag, because you could hit every single mat along the way. And we had a triathlon a few years ago where the last 12 miles of the race, this lady covered that last 12 miles faster than the top male pro on the bike. And though she did it every mat, how do you explain that? And she was 65 years old. How do you explain it's not? It's impossible. So she had to physically get into a vehicle and get to the finish line and cross the bike and mat. So that's the thing we do. So the 3% is when we start looking at. But missing splits. And you're right, like you say, if there's no acceleration or very little acceleration between, if you look at the amount of people that negative split a marathon or half marathon, it's tiny. It's minuscule.
Yep.
So, and then if to do it by 10 minutes, then that's when like big red flags go on right away.
Yeah, and I know for like missed match, and again, when I started, like, hey, you missed a match, you cheated. I think, may not quite to that extent, but, I found all kinds of, okay, hey, this mat picked up on the other side of the road, and so more than one person has this pattern. So I know there's a lot, that goes into it. I'm more sympathetic and less likely just to flat out call someone a cheater, but, kind of what I do, hey, this person, I'll go through all the major marathons. Hey, this person missed multiple mats in this race. Okay, they're kind of flagged. Oh, hey, they missed multiple mats in another race. Okay, now what's really going on? Maybe they're always wearing their bib wrong, or maybe there's something else. So, so it's definitely interesting. So, as far as keeping on the cheating topic, what's kind of the most egregious or most kind of interesting, instance that you came across, and was it one I wrote about, or holding back?
There's one that I will always remember. I won't name any name here, but there's another gentleman that used to do triathlon, and back in the days, we didn't necessarily have that many timing mats along the way, but we had our doubts because of the times they were doing. And as soon as we started adding more mats on the course, he started missing them. So that person would actually go out and ask or study the race from the year before, knew where we would put the timing mat. And then, so we ended up starting to catch him, starting to DQ this guy. And I even had my brother follow him at a triathlon back, this is like 10 years ago, because we knew he was cheating. We knew he was getting to the timing mat at the far turn somehow. And I still remember in the last race that we disqualified at, he ran a 3:32 marathon. He was 65 years old, and he came across the finish line with a gray shirt on and not a drop of sweat on him. And my brother followed him, lost him on the run somehow. He says, I was following him. He was on a bike following me, and he lost him. And he drove to the turnaround. And as soon as I got the notification saying, hey, this guy just made the turn. And I'm like, he goes, no, he's not here. I didn't see him make the turn. And he took his bike and went back and forth for 1 kilometer trying to find this guy and could not find it. So that was probably one. And he cheated at so many races. And then at one triathlon, we followed him, and he went off the course and went into Burger King to have breakfast during the race. So this is like many, many years ago. And at that race, he was asked to get back on the course, ended up doing a very, very slow time because we knew we were following him, and then we never heard from him again. So that's kind of a weird one.
Yeah, I know we've come across some other ones as well. And to me, it's never really, rarely it's the cheating that's most interesting. In that one case, it was. Usually it's kind of the cover up and, the faking the Garmin data, and, photoshopping the data, or having the manual entries, and all that kind of stuff. That's what makes fascinating when people think what they think they can get away with.
And 95% of them don't come clean. You got them cheating. They have no proof. They have no Garmin data. They have nothing. And you're 120% sure that they cheated and cut the course. And we give them the opportunity to come clean, to say, listen, we got you. We know you cheated. We're offering you the chance to come clean. And 95% of them simply don't come clean. They basically will use every excuse in the book. And it's happened a few weeks ago at another triathlon.
Yeah, I can testify to that. I very rarely have people admit it, or when they do, the guy who accidentally, he ran it was a full marathon. It was basically 2 loops around the lake, 2 13-mile loops. He didn't realize he missed a loop.
Yeah.
And then as it came out, he had told the course official that he had blew past the leader and the lead bicyclist, and he actually had won the marathon.
Yeah.
And he tried to use that for Boston. So yeah, it's so obvious. But I think a lot of these people, they're not really true runners. They don't quite understand how absurd it would be, or their friends aren't. And so, people who aren't aren't, in that world, they think, oh, yeah, you can say anytime. You say I did a marathon in an hour and a half, and they wouldn't question it because they don't really know. And so same kind of thing, like, oh, I didn't know I only did 50 miles. So
as a timer for, all of these races, have you ever come across someone when you accuse them of cheating that just said, that's it, yep, I did it?
Yeah, a few weeks ago, we caught somebody. We sent them all the information. And when they came back and said, we'll give you option 1, you admit to it, you're all good. We'll take out the result, we'll disqualify you. Option 2, you're looking at a possible 3-year or lifetime ban from the sport. And he replied right away, option 1, I cheated. Right away, within one email. It took one email. That's very rare. He's in the 5%.
Yeah, even with again, I try to, everyone I write about, I try to, give out, hey, did you know? It's not like, hey, I'm going to write about you or you cheated. It's not like an ultimatum, but it's a lot more, kind and sympathetic if you're not sending me fake Garmin data to try to, to try to back it up or threatening me. So, this is great. Kind of one last question, kind of out of order here, but as far as going back to the technology. Is there any kind of future technology, any kind of, disposable GPS data or just something that would just kind of take this? I know, photo identification is starting to get some headway, in China and whatnot, facial recognition as far as the bib swapping. Anything, is that close or is that far away?
Yeah, right now I think GPS technology is never going to be something that's affordable just because you have to actually bring something with you, a device with you that's transmitting data back, and you need a SIM card system with a modem inside to basically. So not everybody can run with their phone, especially in triathlon. You can't swim with the phone and so on. And then so many companies have tried, and so the best solution right now is still multiple mats along the way. What's going on is there's a company coming out with a new timing system that will be that you can put out the day before the race on the post on the side of the road, and you can add them every half mile because they're going to become more and more accurate and more affordable. And so you basically create a 50 split system along the way, which makes it almost impossible for people to cut and giving more and more data. And you look at Ironman right now, we're putting out sometimes in Arizona a few weeks ago, I think we had 820 timing systems on the run course. There's no way to cut that run course whatsoever. You can't. Same thing in Ain City. I think we had 20 timing splits on the run course. So the more adding more and more splits. There's another technology out there as well that it's called a track box by Race Result, and it's designed for triathlon and small races. And it's a transponder on the ankle, and it's just a box that you put on the side of the road, and it's got 150 meter range on it, and it will read every chip that goes by, and the machine's got a 3-day battery. So you can actually set them up before the race. We tested it in China a few weeks ago, and we had 43 splits on the bike and run course. So that's I think where technology is going to be going in the next couple of years.
Just making the existing technology more affordable so you can do more, so you can have more.
Yeah, and then the new trackers we're using as well are getting better and better and better with prediction time, with data coming in, analyzing that data, detecting the pace changes with the main thing. You can put a lot of pre-requests in there saying if you don't hit this mat in order and so on, it flags them automatically. So there's a lot of, I think most timing companies don't take the time to use the right software to do all this, and having a good combination of a good timing technology and a great software and great timers is going to make it a lot easier for us to find those for sure.
Very good. That's anything else you have, Scott?
No, I think he covered it. I still don't understand why whatever it is that is in my phone that can be a GPS, we can't just make a smaller version of that so we could track people the whole time they're out there running. But
yeah, we there's a device that's $30 to give you an idea. That's out there. That's available today. Alibaba. You go to China, you can buy the little device. It's got about a 12-hour battery life. You put a SIM card in. Then who's going to pay that $9.99 or $5 a month SIM card plan? And who's going to pay the overage on data? So imagine if I had to buy 10,000 of those units, and they'd be sitting. Okay, I can buy 10,000 at $30 each. That's $300,000 investment. Good deal. Then I got to pay $5 a month per device. So there's no timing company that's going to invest that kind of money. And then nobody's going to want to pay for it. Everybody wants it. Nobody wants to pay for it. So that's, I think, why it's there now. It's just not feasible for running when they bitch and complain when they have to increase their entry fee by $10. They're not going to want to pay an extra $10 to have the device for today. And then we're going to lose 10% of the device. To give you an idea, we use 800 of those timing pro chips a year we use in triathlon. And they're a pretty penny for each. So we spend $30,000 or $40,000 a year easily just on lost transponders.
I know they're not losing them; they're ditching them on the side of the road.
Mm.
We've come across that.
To me,
I lose it every race.
I have to send her the invoice. That reminds me.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, well, hey, Marc Roy, Sportstats, thank you, and thank you for all the support. And again, I think you're kind of the gold standard from what I've come across as far as timing. The opposite of the ones that just tell me to go away and don't put in timing math at the turnaround points and kind of do the race, move on. So I think you guys are doing it right. So definitely appreciate that, and I'm sure most everybody does.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me, and Scott, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for listening to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. Have a questionable result to report? Visit marathoninvestigation.com to contact us or email Derek at results@marathoninvestigation.com.
Another case closed for the Marathon's silent guardian.